Wonderful. Hi, everybody. It is so good to see you. I'm about to make my guest my co-host, and now I will introduce him. So we have a really amazing guest here tonight. In just a moment. Dr. Samir Hinduja is an expert in cyber safety, as well as empathy. I guess building empathy in our students is really our focus tonight with cyber safety, and he has credentials all over the place. He just did a recent tour, actually, of many of our sorry, just one second, of Anderson Cooper and NPR, the BBC. He is the co-founder, co-editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Bullying Prevention. He's a professor in the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice at Florida Atlantic University and co-director of the Cyberbullying Research Center and faculty associate at the Berkman Klein Center at Harvard University. I have had a real joy, a pleasure getting to know him over the last couple of weeks as we've prepared to talk to you today. And I am just really, really happy to be bringing him and his expertise to the families at San Gabriel Unified School District. So without further ado, Samir, I am passing them over to you, and I am here to help where I can. Oh, real quick, sorry. Questions in the chat box, anywhere you want them, whatever, you keep asking and we'll keep answering.
Thank you very much, Heather. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. I also want to give a shout out to Mandy and to Jackie. Thank you so much for translating and serving our family, serving our students. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in a minute or a few seconds. But what I first wanted to say, while I get to kind of look at myself and my panelists, but make eye contact with the webcam, is just that I'm probably not going to be able to cover absolutely everything that you want me to during this time. And there may be some other areas that you want me to go in more depth of or share with you certain resources. Please know that I take great pride in following up with people who reach out to me for help. I say to myself that if I'm too busy to respond to an email or get back to someone who's heard me speak, then I'm too busy. And so please know that if you'd like any follow-up, I don't want you to stress. Our goal is to be a resource to you. We want to be able to come through for you rather than you having to spend a ton of minutes or even hours looking up something or trying to figure out something. There's help to be had. Just reach out to us, reach out to me, and I promise to get back to you. All right, let me go ahead and share my slides. All righty, here we go. So addressing cyberbullying and unwise social media use, we're going to be talking about a variety of things. Thinking about, a portrait of a student, which I know that Heather will tell you a little bit more about. I'm sure you already know, but we'll get into that. And we'll be talking about resilience, empathy, moral development, some of these other aspects that really are extremely important for us to focus on. Now, it's interesting when I give parent talks, it almost feels like I'm preaching to the choir because you're taking the time out of your day. You've had a long day, you've been working, you've been focused on family, and now you're spending another hour with us. We respect that. And hopefully you'll find by the end of this session that it has been meaningful for you and you have a friend in me to come through for you whenever you need something. Okay, let's move on. So to begin with, I want to point out that many adults who come to these sorts of sessions, they're a little bit freaked out by technology and some of the dangers they hear about. But what I'd like to do is just to share, as we begin, some of the positives. We know that youth who are struggling, youth of all ages, as they're struggling, they're able to now venture online to hear stories of success, of overcoming, of other students, of their peers, and that helps them to feel a little less alone with what they're struggling with. So there's so many videos of youth, in different age groups, talking about their struggles, talking about how they've overcome it, maybe destigmatizing mental health issues, et cetera. And I think that's been very, very, very positive for the mass of youth that we have in our country and even in our world. Some youth are able to go online and learn tips related to mindfulness, self-care. And I think that's so important. Perhaps previously in generations before, they really didn't know where to turn and they just suffered silently and really struggled internally. But again, thankfully, because of the internet, because of social media, we have these resources. This is, one girl who talks about her eating disorder. There's many individuals who share their struggles, who are vulnerable. And that vulnerability helps us to really care about them and also to get help and to know that others have gone before and others have success stories. And hey, I could have a success story in my life, even though it feels like this is taking on a world of its own, or a life of its own, rather. Um, this child has spoken up about overcoming anxiety. We know that a lot of youth, they do struggle with anxiety, depression, certain fears, rational or irrational. And so the hope is that as they continue to get out there, as they continue to embrace and exploit technology and social media for all the positives that are there, then again, it'll help them not just succeed professionally, but also personally. And that's our goal. I also want to say that without technology, maybe individuals would not know where to go for help if they were struggling, like deeply struggling, maybe with some sort of crisis or tragedy or tremendous atypical stressor in their life. And so we've got, for example, crisis text line, and we know that kids are so proficient with their phone, even preferring to interact with the phone as compared to maybe face to face. And so we have these mediums, we have these mechanisms that they can tap into to get assistance. We've also seen that even Google is able to direct resources to an individual who might be struggling, who might type in certain words that betray some sort of issue that they're facing. And again, a positive technology there, reaching kids, maybe saving lives that would normally not be saved without these benefits. We've also seen on social media, as individuals post, I know social media gets a bad rap, but as individuals post, these companies, they use AI, they use other technologies in order to identify problematic text or questioning themes. And if someone is betraying, for example, suicidal tendencies, the app itself will reach out to them, direct them to resources. The app, Facebook, for example, has in the past reached out to friends, asking them to check in with someone who might be struggling, again, just to provide that social support. So just another benefit of technology. And then even with live streaming, my point here is that technology has advanced, and we've got a long way to go, but technology has advanced to even be able to identify concerning remarks or statements in live streams. And so there again, we might be able to come to the aid of someone who's betraying some deep trauma or struggle. And of course, when you use hashtags, there's various sorts of mechanisms in place to message that individual, that student, that youth with resources, with support, with encouragement, etc. So now that I've pointed out some of the positives, let's talk about some of the negatives, because again, that's why we're here, to better come alongside our kids and support them and encourage them and help them to develop a practice of behaving in civil and respectful ways online. Cyberbullying, it's just basically being a jerk using technology. It typically occurs with regular bullying in that we primarily find that since it's someone from school who tends to be the aggressor, well, something bubbles up at school and then it maybe carries on online. And I know right now things are primarily distance learning, but we have to be thinking about, okay, soon enough, hopefully we'll get back to hybrid and then full in person. And so there's just a strong overlap in all the research we've done here. Way back in the day, maybe 10 to 15 years ago, the media used to use a lot of sensationalistic headlines to instill a lot of fear in adults, in parents like you and me, about the realities of stranger danger. And to be sure, that is a concern. But when it comes to cyberbullying, again, it's primarily peers. And I would say, again, based on my research, based on someone who is a cyber criminologist, stranger danger it's relatively rare, comparatively speaking, when it comes to other sorts of struggles or issues that your child may face online, like cyberbullying, like sexting, like digital dating abuse. I don't have a chance to get into some of those, but please follow up with me because we've got resources. I can talk you through whatever you need. I want to present this because I wonder if you're overwhelmed by always hearing about another app or another device or another platform that you need to be aware of. So starting from the top left, we've got Marco Polo, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. The middle row is House Party, YouTube, WhatsApp, Twitch, and the bottom row is Discord, PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, and TikTok. The thing here, though, is that I don't want you to get overwhelmed because much of what we'll be focusing on and what we should focus on is actually how to raise a decent human being. I mean, that's my goal with my couple of kids. That's your goal. We just want to come alongside them and raise a decent human being. And so don't get stressed out about, oh my goodness, I've got to keep up with this new app that I just heard about and that all the headlines are now buzzing about. Or, oh man, thinking about this platform that my child wants, during the winter holidays. What am I going to do here? How can I support them? What do I need to learn about interactivity and some of the maybe concerns there? Please don't stress out too much about that. Of course, we can give you resources and how-to guides and videos and tip sheets related to various apps and gaming platforms, etc. But I don't want you to stress out about this sort of stuff. I collect data all the time, and I think it's important, rather than going on anecdotal statements as to what this neighbor might say or what this person at school might say, let's look at the research. We just conducted this national study involving tweens. It's the first of its kind. Everyone has studied, not everyone, but a good number of people have studied teens, 13 to 17, let's say, but we decided to study tweens. And so we got a grant from the AT&T Foundation to work with Cartoon Network to figure out, okay, what's going on when it comes to the average tween across America. And just to quickly give you a glimpse of what's going on, if you look at the far left, you see that it's about 1 out of 2 youth, when you're thinking about the major genders, have been bullied at school. Now, we do have some data from transgendered youth, but the numbers are so small that we can't really make any meaningful statements about it. When it comes to being cyberbullied, it's about 14%. Bullying others at school, revealing that, okay, I was the aggressor, I was the offender, it's maybe around 13, 14% on average. And then revealing that they've cyberbullied somebody else, it's maybe about 3% or so. Again, these are 9 to 12-year-olds. I think it's important to also discuss how it affects tweens. And so we wanted to get a feel for this. And so you can see it deeply affected their feelings about themselves. So I would say close to 2 out of 3, close to 3 out of 4 said, yeah, it deeply affected my self-esteem, my feelings about myself. Now, of course, it's going to affect your friendships, your social relationships. What was surprising to me was look at the physical health, which is the second group of bars. So thinking about somatic disorders, thinking about physiological illnesses or struggles, on average is about 13%, but you can see that it's over 1 out of 5 girls who revealed that it affected their physical health. If you need any of these charts or this data, I can send you the reports. They're also available on our website and online. But again, just wanted to give you kind of a glimpse for what's going on amongst tweens, 9 to 12-year-olds. Now let's turn our attention briefly, before we move away from the data, and let's just summarize what's going on amongst teens. So recently we conducted this national study, youth across America, 12 to 17-year-olds. And if I can direct your attention to the second and the fourth group of bars, this simply says that it's about 1 out of every 4 youth have been cyberbullied during their lifetime, and about 1 out of 8 or so say that they've cyberbullied somebody else. It's occurring a lot less than school-based bullying. School-based bullying still occurs more often. But of course, these percentages are meaningful and they merit our attention and our response. So again, thank you for being here so that we can learn. I also want to point out that the majority of students, 52%, said that it deeply affected their ability to learn and feel safe at school when they were cyberbullied. Now, some well-meaning adults simply say when a child tells them that they're being cyberbullied, hey, why don't you put down your phone? You're always on your phone. Or why don't you just delete the app? But that's just very dismissive and it trivializes what the youth is experiencing. So I would caution against those sorts of messages. Plus, as I mentioned, there's a strong overlap between school-based bullying and cyberbullying. Accordingly, we can't be dismissive and know that it just sort of ebbs and flows between the various environments actually quite seamlessly. So let's talk about ideas. Let's talk about strategies and solutions that are research informed or even evidence-based specifically that seem to work. First, please do not immediately freak out. Most likely to cause injury, according to the Centers for Disease Control, are car accidents, homicide, child abuse, suicide, and drowning. According to the Mayo Clinic, what's most likely to cause worry? Well, it's kidnapping, snipers, terrorists, dangerous strangers, and drugs. Now, to be sure, I present this to you a little bit tongue-in-cheek because, and by the way, I'm pausing because I want to be respectful of our translators and try to remember not to talk too quickly. So be gracious with me as it comes to that. But again, my point here is that you and I, as parents, are not really losing a ton of sleep as it relates to these sorts of concerns, which are valid concerns, proven by the research that's been done by the Mayo Clinic and the CDC. In the same vein, I don't want us to be sort of up in arms when it comes to the potential issues that your child might face online. Plus, when we do so, our child picks up on that. Maybe we just come across as like really tightly wound or really inflamed about this sort of stuff, and then they just shut down. They don't want to talk to us because they fear we're going to fly off the handle or respond irrationally or irreasonably, maybe immediately confiscate their device or ban social media apps. And so they will just hesitate to talk to us, even though we desperately need for them to keep us in the loop as to what's going on. So communication is such a big deal. But what I find working with parents is that there tends to be a disproportionate focus on, let's call, offline activities. So we have many parents who are hyper involved in their kids' offline lives, whether it's football or soccer practice, whether it's dance or debate or chess or cheerleading, whatever. They're hyper involved in their kids' offline lives, but they are sort of hands off when it comes to their kids' online lives. Now, of course, this makes sense to me because maybe they haven't grown up with the technology. They're overwhelmed and stressed out like you, like me. We're all stressed out right now and overextended. And it's hard to carve out time to stay abreast of new developments in technology and with youth culture. So it's all very overwhelming. Plus, they probably are thinking, well, the school's got to be covering this. I mean, hopefully Heather is going to organize some sort of webinar for all of us. And, thankfully she did. And of course, in the past, she's continued to focus on this issue and will continue to focus on it to make sure that we meet your needs. But I would love for more parents to broach the topic. You don't have to know everything. You just have to be willing to come across as non-judgmental and not critical. I'd love for you to go online with your kids. Maybe go to Starbucks or something like that and order your favorite beverage and just sit down with your child for 20 minutes talking about their favorite apps, what they're loving, how it makes their life better. Just build that rapport. And then over time, you can get into the more sensitive questions. They can often teach you if you catch them in a good mood. I want you to enter their world, and ideally you start early. Not to say that middle school is too late, but we all know elementary schoolers who are incredibly proficient with a device. And I just shared with you my research involving 9, 10, and 11 and 12-year-olds. And so those are including some elementary schoolers. We actually find 9 out of 10 of those 90% of those 9 to 12-year-olds are on social media. Even though, according to the formal letter of the law, the terms of service, you're supposed to be 13 years of age or older. But this is our reality. Plus, we have to watch our own words. You and I mean, maybe I won't speak for you, but I'm capable of being cranky and irritable and sometimes a bit short with my comments and my statements. So I don't want to be caught by my kids saying something mean or saying something callous. Yeah, be careful when you're cranky and then call it out. Let's say you're watching a television show together or a movie. Hopefully you pause the movie and you say, whoa, that person really crossed a line with regard to what they said. That is unacceptable. And, maybe their friends laughed or maybe we even chuckled a little bit, some nervous laughter here in our living room. But, we just got to make sure we've got standards in our family. These standards, they matter so much. And I'm trying to do a good job instilling standards in my own kids, which may not reflect, the rest of the world's standards. But hopefully as we continue to pour into them and they slowly but surely learn how much we care about them, they'll buy in. And I know that's a challenge and I don't have it perfectly figured out. So the goal again is to just chat with our students about their device use. Here are some questions you might ask. Hey, what websites do you go onto? What sites are your friends into? What's your favorite? What do you do on this app or this site? Where are some other places that you go online? Of course, you go online at our house, but where else? And then over time, you can get into the more probing questions. Hey, have you ever been contacted by someone that you didn't know? How'd you deal with that? I think many times adults don't really give kids, students, the benefit of the doubt and think that, those kids, those students actually are implementing some measures when it comes to safety, when it comes to taking care of themselves online. They're not clueless, they're not mindless and completely ignorant. They are doing something. Maybe they're doing enough, but maybe not. And as they chat with you about what they're doing, you can fill in the gaps and we can help you. Have you ever received a text that made you feel uncomfortable, weirded out, creeped out? How did you respond? And then again, how do you keep yourself safe online? Ask them point blank. Hopefully they're familiar with reporting, with blocking, with muting. And again, we can send you tip sheets on how to do that if you'd like to help them, if they don't know. I also think it's important to go to the proverbial horse's mouth, where we asked youth specifically, okay, what worked to stop cyberbullying? And again, this is tweens. So back to our 9 to 12-year-olds. 60%, 3 out of 5 said, you know what? I blocked them and that worked. 1 out of 2 said telling a parent worked. Only a little less than 30% said reporting it to the website or app worked. That's very disconcerting for me. These websites and apps, they need to be a lot more responsive. And we'll talk more about that as we move forward. Reporting it to my school, only 12%. That's kind of a bummer. I don't know if that's because they don't know who to turn to at their school. Maybe we all need to make sure that they have Heather's contact information because she lives and breathes technology and these sorts of things. And maybe they want to be able to chat with someone who is eloquent when it comes to this sort of stuff. Or maybe they're just hesitant because they feel like, okay, if I report it to my school, they're going to talk to my parents and then my parents are going to blow up on me. So we've just got to work through that and get to the bottom of it. This is what works as it related to my teen study. Again, 12 to 17-year-olds. Again, blocking was most powerful. Ignoring them, yeah, that's great. And we'll talk about resilience in a little bit. Telling a parent, about 16%. Reporting it to the website was even lower here, 7%. So again, we're identifying some issues, and my work outside of working with students and parents and educators is to try to solve some of these problems so we increase the success rate in stopping or reducing cyberbullying. So let's talk about parenting in general. So we want to be involved in our kids' life, and there's some really cool research out of the University of Pennsylvania, like Adam Grant and some other scholars. And I just want to share with you what they found, because this is extremely applicable to how I want to raise my kids, using tech and not using tech, and how you might. First off, there was this one study done involving 50 different countries. And what they were trying to figure out is, okay, as they surveyed parents, they asked, okay, parents, what do you think are the dominant traits or characteristics you're trying to instill in your kids as you're raising them up? And way up there on the list was, you know what? We want them to be successful. We want them to be high achievers. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm reading this research, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. But what was really cool was that above success and above high achievement was, you know what? We want them to be kind. We want them to be caring, compassionate, selfless, others focused. That was number one across all these different countries. Now, you might hope that that's true, but it was really neat for me to see that borne out in the research, in the data. So there's been a number of studies involving twins trying to get to the bottom of the question, is it nature or is it nurture? And what they found was that the tendency to be kind and compassionate and caring and others focused is about 25 to 50% due to nature. It's actually genetic. It's actually inherited, which is a little surprising to me. But what that also means is that 50 to 75% is due to nurture, which means it's on my shoulders as a parent and as an educator. It's on your shoulders as parents, as educators, whatever platform you have with kids. And we might be like, oh my goodness, another thing on my shoulders. But maybe you would think to yourself like, oh, this is actually good. I have some autonomy. I have a role to play, and I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my darndest to shape my kids in the way that they should go. So when our kids are doing the right things, we want to commend them. But here's what we learned from the research. When you're praising your kids for doing the right thing, you want to make sure that it is rooted specifically in compliments and in praise and not in a reward, because we don't want them to do the right thing only because we're holding out some sort of carrot, some sort of reward. And I've been guilty of this. I work with youth every week. And so let's say, when I work with them on the weekends, we have a guest speaker in our organization. So I have said to them years ago, look, guys, if you would just be quiet for 20 minutes and listen to our guest speaker, I promise to give you candy afterwards. But then I saw this research, and I kid you not, from that day, I have not promised them any sort of reward like that, because they need to do the right thing, being respectful to our guest speaker, because it's the right thing to do, not because I'm giving them candy. So again, make sure it's rooted in praise and not reward. Secondly, when you're commending them, make sure it's a reflection of their character. So let me give you an example. Let's say that my daughter is in the kitchen with me and we're making stew. And I'm on one cutting block and I'm chopping up the chicken breasts into cubes. And my wife is over next to me and she's working on the broth with salt and spices. And my daughter is on the other cutting board and she's chopping up the celery and the carrots and the other vegetables which we like in our stew. Now, what I could say is, hey, Maya, thank you for helping me. I really appreciate that. But what I should say, according to the research, is tie it to her character and say, wow, Maya, you're such a helper. I love it whenever, me or your mom needs something, you just sort of swoop in. The world needs more helpers just like you. And I know it's a little bit of wordsmithing, but it's so very important because our kids, as they're growing up, they're looking for identity. They're looking for roles that they can take on that will lead to affirmation and attention and validation. And so use that to your advantage. Label them as a great helper, as a great encourager, as a great listener, whatever it is. And then that becomes part of who they are. And then down the road, when an opportunity presents itself to rise up and fill that role, they will remember, oh yeah, I'm a great listener. I'm a great helper. This is just what I do. And they'll do the right thing. And we'll tie that into, their online behaviors as well. Our kids make mistakes sometimes. We have to scold them. We have to come down hard on them. But when we're expressing disapproval, there's two directions in which this can go. And please forgive me if you already know the distinction, but the two directions are in the direction of guilt and in the direction of shame. And guilt is where your child thinks to themselves, I did a bad thing. But shame is where your child thinks to themselves, I'm a bad person. We never want any kid or any adult, frankly, to internalize that message. Because what we find in the research is that when you cultivate guilt, your child becomes a problem solver, an amender. But when you cultivate shame, they either lash out at the persons who shamed them or they run away from their problems. They become avoiders. So it's really important to, again, say, look, you made a mistake. I still love you unconditionally. I'm in your corner, but we got to make this right and help them to become problem solvers. So to summarize, convey that the behavior was wrong. They might justify it or rationalize it because they see things a little bit differently than you, but no, it's wrong for these same root reasons, which we've discussed involving the golden rule or every other conversation you've had in your household. Plus, get them to understand their behaviors do not occur in a vacuum. They affect other people. And when I was growing up, I remember telling my mom and my dad, look, I don't get it. It's my life. I should get to be able to make my choices. I don't see how this affects you. But now that I'm a parent, my eyes are wide open to how a child's behavior affects definitely their reputation in the community, what that child's friends' parents think about that child and their parents, what the school thinks about them, the opportunities that are going to come that child's way, how the siblings are going to be treated when they go through the school system as well. So it's very complicated. We need them to slowly but surely get this point. And then, as I mentioned, we want them to become problem solvers. Let's say that my son made a mistake on Snapchat, did something really cruel and vicious. Someone took a screenshot and now he's busted. And I could be like, Ravi, why did you do this? Can't believe you did this. I need you to write a letter of apology to that other student. Now that's a good suggestion, but what's so much better is if I say, okay, Ravi, you messed up here. How are you going to make things right? How are you going to restore equilibrium? And then in this safe and supportive environment of our family, I'm getting him to practice his skills of conflict resolution, of again, making things right. And so maybe he'll post some compliments on Instagram about the kid. Maybe he'll figure out some other way to do the right thing. And so consider that as well. Make sure you help them come up with their solutions. Otherwise, they're going to move into adulthood and they won't have that toolbox of skills to solve their social and relational conflict and make up for their mistakes. Resilience. So again, this is like a portrait of a graduate element. When I think about resilience, I think about a rubber ducky being pushed underwater. What happens? Pops back up to the surface. It's all about facing obstacles and overcoming those obstacles, overcoming adversity. When it comes to bullying, when it comes to cyberbullying, when it comes to some of these issues, many times we as parents, and I can relate, even educators, we're so quick to swoop in and try to rescue our children. But again, if we're constantly doing that, they're never developing the skills that they need. and we're probably doing them a disservice, ill preparing them for adulthood. Instead, we need to sort of expose them a little bit to some risk, to some of these problem behaviors. And of course, not the severe ones, not even the moderate ones, but the mild, the very minor ones. And then see how they respond, always standing in the background, willing to come through for them and help them when they ask for it. My partner's family is from Virginia, and near their property are a bunch of maple trees. And so every February, we tap those maple trees, and then we have a fun session in the kitchen where we boil it and purify it and put it in jars. My point here is that maple syrup is in all these trees, and resilience is in every kid. It's an innate characteristic. We just have to tap into it and then support it. Environmental factors like parents and school and social institutions need to support it, and that's what makes the difference. We wrote a research article on it. We've written research articles on everything that I'm sharing. Well, most of the main concepts that I'm sharing with you. So drop me a note if you need any of that. But what we found is that those kids with the highest levels of resilience, they engaged in what we call pro-social responses. They reported it to the school. They reported it to the site. They changed their screen name. They deleted their account. They called the police. My point is that they thought to themselves, hey, look, I just don't have to take the abuse or the mistreatment or the harassment online. I have agency. I can control my online experience. And so they did. However, those with the lowest levels of resilience, they did nothing. They suffered silently. And I don't want my kids to just take it. We don't want our kids to just suffer silently. So the first thing I want to bring up is we want our kids to have top of mind helper words, helper phrases. So you and I, we have positive affirmations that we say to ourselves whenever we need to overcome something. For example, me finishing a term paper or pushing through my workout or gutting through some other sort of stressful activity like a home repair that I don't really enjoy at all. Well, I say certain things to myself and it helps me to push through. We want our kids to have a sort of a dossier, a repertoire of things in their brain, which they can bring to the surface and use to help overcome obstacles. It seems very elementary, but truly so much is a battlefield of the mind. It's what you say to yourself, what is playing on repeat in your mind, which either helps you to become stronger or weaker, so to speak. You know what I mean. We're familiar with the work of Carol Dweck, and she talks a lot about mindset. And again, how you just need to change your framework, your perspective, your paradigm, the words that you use to explain certain things to you. And that helps so much. So I made a mistake would be something you could say, but that's very self-defeating. Instead, mistakes help me improve. I don't understand. Instead, hey, what am I missing? It's good enough. Is this really my best work? You can just see how these words and how you reframe things really helps you to become a more resilient person. And these have implications with any sort of social conflict, offline and online, that kids are facing as well. I also like the power of yet. So I'm not good at this yet. I don't know the answer yet. I can't do this yet. And so again, we just have to continue to remind our kids that they are resilient. And as they see the fruits of their labors and that they are able to overcome adversity, that then gives them so much more confidence to deal with any other sort of struggles that they might face on social media or while they're gaming or some other interpersonal type of conflict. I'm also a big fan of improv, and you and I might remember Whose Line Is It Anyway? But I think that families at home truly, and of course at schools as well, you can have improv games. And I think so much of growing up is learning how to improvise, learning how to think quickly on your feet. And it helps with, creative thinking and attentive listening and collaboration if you're working with maybe your siblings or parents. It's a great skill to have. And it also leads to higher levels of resilience. So consider this. I mean, there's games that you can buy which are based on improv. And again, I think these are skills that our students, our youth need to have. I'm also a fan of the ABC model, which comes out of Pennsylvania as well. Adversity, beliefs, and consequences. So here's the bottom line. A kid faces an adversity. They're being bullied. They're being humiliated on social media, something like that. Well, then immediately they adopt certain beliefs. Those beliefs really do dictate their consequent actions. So let me give you some examples. When they're dealing with some adversity, again, let's say bullying, cyberbullying, some sort of harm, they feel these things happening. Their rights have been violated. They have lost standing with somebody else or with their peer group. They feel like there's a future threat. They feel like their rights have been violated. And then what happens? These heavy, heavy emotions completely take over. And then they're just operating in a cloud and they can't see straight and they make unwise decisions, maybe acting out violently, etc. Maybe making just risky decisions, unwise decisions. What we need to do as parents is help them to take a gigantic step backwards from the negative emotion and then think about, okay, what's really happened here? Let me give you an example. Let's say that I'm a girl and I see this on Instagram and that's my adversity because I was not invited. I was left out. I was excluded. I was somehow rejected from this friend group, at least based on this photo, because they had a sleepover without me. So that's my adversity. Immediately, within milliseconds almost, your subconscious starts to process, your conscious mind starts to process. What are the messages I start to adopt and internalize? Let's say it goes this way. Oh my goodness, they had a sleepover without me? I can't believe it. Oh, man, I knew it. I guess I wasn't really part of their in group. You know what? They're probably talking bad about me right now, making fun of me. And oh, I remember this one time when a couple of them were whispering, maybe they were actually talking about me. Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, there's been a number of times where, yeah, I feel like I've been left out, or maybe they got together without me and I just don't know about it yet. This is my lot in life. I'm going to be forever alone. My life is going to forever suck. And this is just one other reminder of how it's going to be. You see how quickly that just devolved into madness, all because of the belief you adopted to interpret, to make sense of the adversity. But let's try to get our kids to interpret it in a more positive light. For example, okay, so they had a sleepover and yeah, I'm feeling a little bit bad because I feel like I'm left out, but maybe they just got together after soccer practice and I wasn't there because we were on vacation and the mom just said you can have 3 other girls over. Maybe if she said that you could have 4 other girls over, they would have called me up, no doubt. I believe that they still care about me. I believe that they're still definitely my friends. And plus, they're not responsible for how much fun I have in my life. I'm going to ask my mom if I can call up a few friends and have a sleepover this very weekend, and it's going to be amazing. So again, it's all about how you would interpret the adversity. And sometimes the beliefs we adopt are extremely counterproductive, but we want to get them to actually be positive and beneficial and good for us. Here are some of my favorite books related to resilience. Resilience is the dominant thread in the protagonist or of the protagonist in each of these books. I'm happy to follow up with you with a specific list if that helps, or you tell me how old your kid is and then I can meaningfully equip you accordingly. Here's my favorite movies. Again, the dominant theme is resilience. So let's say you sit down to watch one of them with your kids. It's easy to just sort of eat all the popcorn and then immediately want your kids to brush your teeth and go to sleep. But then we miss out on the teachable moment of talking about, okay, what is the main takeaway message of this hero, of this heroine, of this person? What can we get out of it and how can we apply it to our life? I have this thing in my family, which has been going on for decades, where I tell them, look, I don't want to watch a movie unless it's potentially life-changing, which means, it's a story of resilience or a story of empathy, and I can apply it to my life, and somehow my heart will be touched and changed forever. So again, use it as some sort of subtle assignment to get your kids to be thinking about these sorts of things and acting in the right ways. I'm a big fan of Tim Tebow, and he's super resilient. He's always sort of grinding towards his dreams to become now a Major League Baseball player. I'm a big fan of Malala Yousafzai because, as you might have known, she was actually shot in the head by the Taliban, but she recently graduated from Oxford and is just dominating and continues to speak out about rights for women and girls. I'm a big fan of George Washington Carver and all he did to, I would say, in part, save the American economy when cotton was king, but cotton was wiped out by the boll weevil, an insect, but then he was able to use peanuts to come up with all these amazing products. And then I'm a big fan of Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, who spent a couple of years in a concentration camp and just was able to reframe that awful, horrific experience into something positive to keep him going. This is a picture of my dad and my sister, and I share this with you because my dad came over from India without really knowing a soul because he wanted a better life for his future children. My point is that you parents, you have stories of resilience in your own life. And I want you to, when you're able to, share them with your own kids so that your kids know, wow, it's in my family. It's who we are. And then maybe down the road, they'll think, yes, I'm a Hinduja. That's my last name. I can do this. I can rise up like my dad did or like my mom did. That's my shoulder. I get allergy shots. I'm very allergic to a number of things like cockroaches, oak trees, dogs, cats, dust mites, pollen, etc. So what's happening is that they created this serum, this concoction of all of those disease-causing pathogens, all of those allergens, and they inject me with small doses of it because as they try to inoculate me, I develop a tolerance, a resistance to it. And it's the same way with adversity. The pathway to resilience isn't through the avoidance of risk, it's through successful engagement with it. So we can't always be saving and rescuing our kids. Instead, we have to expose them to a little bit of it in a safe and supportive environment.
Samir, can you
Yes,
repeat that? That was really profound.
Sure.
It was the definition of resilience. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically resilience, I was just saying how many times, again, our tendency is to sort of swoop in, but when it comes to resilience, in order to achieve it, our kids have to engage with it successfully. We can't avoid risk. We have to successfully engage with risk in order to grow in resilience. And so that's kind of what's happening with my allergy treatments. And it's just a perfect metaphor for what we're trying to do with our kids. Again, low doses, let's say minor struggles, maybe even possibly moderate struggles, but you're always there to sort of support them and make sure, for example, my doctor's in the room so I don't have an allergic reaction or my throat closes up and I can't breathe. Let's talk about empathy. Empathy, of course, is compassion, but it's also a sense of understanding and respect for other people's perspectives, even if you don't agree with them. Our research basically shows, very briefly, students with low empathy, 1.8 times as likely to bully someone at school and 2.3 times as likely to cyberbully someone in the last month. But those with high levels of empathy, over 2 times less likely to bully and almost 3 times less likely to cyberbully. It matters so much. Here are my favorite shows related to empathy. And so the dominant thread with the protagonist in each of these shows is that they're empathetic creatures towards others. When you sit down with your kids and work through them, hopefully you're discussing, okay, what are the takeaway messages? I'm happy to provide you a list with my favorite shows and books related to empathy and discuss what I would advise you to do if you tell me a little bit about your child. Here are my favorite books related to empathy. Some of them you might have read when you were growing up. Some of them have been turned into movies. So I can tell you about these if you'd like and just continue to advise you. But I hope that my kids become avid readers. We'll see. I just think it matters so much. I bet Heather was a reader. We can talk more about that later. Sometimes we really want our kids to hang out with people and to get to know people, friends, possible friends that they wouldn't normally hang out with. And so that requires us to get them to talk to other people. And so is there something you can do in the form of some sort of pseudo assignment where they're maybe interviewing and getting to know someone that they would not normally hang out with or sit with at lunch if we were actually having school in person and sitting together at lunch? And the point here is that if we're intentional about putting our kids in situations where they're meeting a wide swath of people from different backgrounds, well, then these walls come down, these preconceived notions fall, and they just realize that, hey, this other kid is just like me. I thought we were really different, but they have the same hopes and dreams and struggles just like me. So again, how are you intentionally getting your kids to get that? Also, maybe you could have some sort of contest related to purposeful acts of kindness. My colleague, Justin, he picks up his child, Mark, from school every day. And from kindergarten till now, 4th grade, every day after picking him up from school, he asks, what did you do that was kind to somebody else? Every day, Mark has to have an answer for his dad, Justin. And so it's become habitual. It's become who Mark is. But again, we're training our kids to be intentional because it's not enough to not do the wrong thing. We want our kids to actually be doing the right thing. And I'm a big fan of Tim Tebow, as I mentioned, and he organizes these proms for special needs youth. And he enlists the help of youth without special needs to serve as waiters, ushers, fellow dance partners. And I'm sure it's a little bit uncomfortable because they're in a social setting they're not used to, but It stretches them. It helps them to build friendships they might not normally have built. And so my point here is that how are we putting our kids into situations where their hearts are softened? My parents are from India, and so I was fortunate enough to go to India and then see all sorts of sadness and poverty and deformity of young kids due to malnutrition, which has broken my heart irreparably. And so now I'm so sensitive to sadness and always do what I can to help other people. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. In our own community, there's places of need. And so we should take our kids on to, I don't know if you would call them local missions trips or community service projects, but there's ways to intentionally put our kids in places where their hearts could be softened. There's an activity called zoom in and zoom out. And the point here is that kids are good at showing empathy to family and close friends, but when it comes to acquaintances, strangers, not so much. So we want them to, zoom in, but then also zoom out to take in multiple perspectives, to see how somebody else that they don't even know might be interpreting a situation, might be feeling, might be trying to cope with those negative feelings. And then, of course, determining what we can do. So it's just, again, this think about a telescope, a microscope, sort of zooming in, zooming out, and sort of work through different circumstances or situations with your kid. We also have a ton of scenarios which I can send you, which might help you with your kid in this as well. It's just a PDF file, which I'm happy to email you or send you. It's on our website too. This activity is called Crying Baby. And so you could use this, let's say, with middle schoolers. You show them a photo of a crying baby and you talk, okay, what's going on here? Why might this baby be crying? And the answers, of course, are hungry, cold, maybe too hot, maybe just wants to be held, etc. And so then you talk about how, okay, this baby is dealing with something and trying to express them, but it's difficult for them to express them, but they're still struggling and their struggle is worth responding to. Have you ever had certain struggles and you've tried to express them in a certain way, but maybe nobody was picking up on it or didn't know how to read you, or you didn't know how to share the heaviness that was on your heart? And then also thinking about a parent. When a child is crying, maybe it's a little bit annoying, frustrating. You're trying to get to the bottom of, okay, what is going on here? But of course, that parent has to stay calm. And so thinking about our peers when they're struggling, our siblings when they're struggling, maybe you want to get irritated and annoyed and just be done with it, but you have to also stay calm. You have to also figure out how you can help them, how you can help a best friend, an acquaintance, somebody who is deeply in need. And so you just sort of work through that with the example of this crying baby with your child. Similarly, you could show them a picture that you could just find online of a kid who appears to need help. And then the assignment would be, let's say you give your kid an assignment at home. You say, son, daughter, child, please write a short story about this kid that you see in this picture. Just make it up. What's their family life like? Do they have any siblings? What is their pet's name if they have any pets? What are their interests? And what do you think they need? On a physical level, who are those needs met by? Their parents, maybe shelter, food, clothing. What do you think their emotional needs are? Could those be met by the parents? Could friends meet them? Could the school meet them? How could the child themselves meet their own needs? And so that overall, that conversation helps to cultivate empathy, because many times when they write that short story, they're, as you know, we see things through our own eyes. And so they're putting themselves in those shoes as well. So it's just sort of a revealing exercise you could do with your children. Some of you follow, and I want to, of course, keep looking at my clock so I can leave a little bit of time for questions. So thank you for bearing with me. Some of you might follow the Humans of New York page on Instagram, which basically involves this creator who goes around and takes pictures of random people in New York, and then it posts a picture, and in the caption tells a story of that person. And the story shares largely, honestly, about struggles, about hard times, maybe about overcoming adversity, etc. But the reason why this page is so popular is because that's how people connect with each other. That's how hearts get connected, through the sharing of vulnerabilities. So what I've seen at schools, this is at Humans of MSD, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, which is a school down here in South Florida, in Parkland, where we had this massive tragedy and shooting on February 14th, Valentine's Day, a couple years ago. But what they do is they feature the stories of kids, of students, and they share how the student, again, might be not feeling like they fit in, but then how they feel like they found a community or got help or overcame or found belongingness, etc. It could be about anything. But my point here is that your kids are online. Can you encourage them to do something positive with social media? For example, create a humans of their school page, something like that, or figure out another way to make kindness go viral or promote positivity. Use their talents, their skills, their creative digital abilities to do something epic and cool. So when it comes to household rules, this is what I would have in my household, what I might recommend to you. If your grades go down, your tech use is going to go down. If you stop contributing to our family, your tech use is going to go down. You've heard, of course, you should keep the phone in a designated location at night, but the real reason is because kids are very willing to give up sleep in order to stay in touch with their friends via text or Snapchat or something like that. I would never give up sleep to stay in touch with someone in the middle of the night. But I remember growing up and how I just wanted to stay on the phone talking to my best friend about our latest crushes until 2, 3 in the morning. And I didn't care about, school starting at 7 or 8 the next morning. But we just want them to not be cranky and irritable the next day so they can focus in on school. Plus, maybe you could say, look, I need you to pay 10% of your cell phone bill every month, just as this periodic reminder that, look, it's a privilege and not a right. With that privilege comes certain responsibilities. I saw this on Twitter. I really loved it. This mom says, my new requirement is that if my kid wants to download a new app, she has to write a one-page report on the founders, company story, and business model so she understands how the app benefits from her use. I just really like that. It brought a smile to my face. We just want our kids to understand on some level that they are the product. They are, these apps are benefiting from their use. And maybe that'll help them to be thinking about using the apps with more discretion. I saw this, and you've seen examples of this, where a parent has a child who does something improper using technology, but then that parent publicly shames them, maybe using that app, or posts something, online about them that's very negative in tone, just to teach them a lesson. This is so detrimental to the well-being and the emotional health of your child. Please do not do this. It's just poor practice. Again, it cultivates a lot of shame. We talked earlier how that's just devastating to a child's psyche. This is one of my friends. My wife goes to this mommy meetup with Bree, and Bree set this up. She created, I kid you not, this small little, I guess it's a bed for her kids' devices, like their tablets and their phones. And she gets her kids to believe that the phones go to sleep before we go to sleep, and we wake up before our devices wake up as well. And I thought that was just really creative for younger kids. And maybe this wouldn't fly with middle schoolers or high schoolers, but it's just something to keep in mind if you have, younger siblings, or if your kids have younger siblings. I thought it was just creative. And maybe it'll open up our own minds to think of something creative we can do with our middle schoolers and high schoolers. On our website, we have a technology use sort of contract outlining expectations for the child and also for the parent, that you as parents, you will not be unreasonable, you will not take drastic measures, you will treat your child with dignity, etc. So consider reading over that. You can find it on our website. I'm happy to send it to you, and I'll give you more information about working with, reaching out to me, contacting me if you'd like. As I get close to wrapping up here, if your child's a target, take a deep breath, and first and foremost, make sure that they're safe. Please, please help your child to collect evidence. That means screenshots and screen recordings. We have a document which tells you how to work on any device from, of course, phones, Android, Apple phones, of course, your laptop, but also Kindle, iWatch, PlayStation, Xbox. Make sure you all know how to take screenshots on all those devices, because the social media company needs it to get the content taken down, and the school needs it for investigation. Work with the school, but give them time. They have a lot on their plate. They do care about your kid, but give them time to do their investigation. Maybe contact the parents of the offender. Maybe they're gracious and deal with it, but maybe not. And then work with the content or service provider. That means file a report with Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook or Twitter or whoever, TikTok. Please know, if it takes you more than 24 to 48 hours to get a meaningful response, because you got a friend in me, that you can reach out to me, and I will contact these sites on your behalf with the screenshots you share with me, and we'll get the hate account deleted or the humiliating photo taken down or embarrassing video deleted, etc. And you can contact the police as it's necessary. When your child bullies others, cultivate empathy, monitor usage, install software, which I will end with in my next couple slides, and then apply consequences and stick to the limits that you set. I know it's hard. We don't want to be a pushover when we go into parenting, but sometimes just because we're trying to survive, we sometimes bend the rules a little bit, but we've got to stick to our guns, so to speak, and escalate the consequences of the behavior of the escalate the intensity of the consequences if the behavior continues. Last couple points. Everyone asked me about software and monitoring. I have no relationships with any of these companies, so I'm not getting any sort of kickback by recommending them to you, but I've just reviewed a bunch of them. I really like Circle by Disney, which is an app you can download and install. There's also a hardware component if you want your entire home network to be, monitored and et cetera. But anyways, it gives you the ability to pause devices, to restrict certain apps, including all the apps your kids love, to allow for older siblings, but not for younger siblings, to allow for the adults, but not the kids, to turn off the internet if you want, et cetera, et cetera. It's very feature rich. Give it a try. Maybe you'll like it. Maybe it'll meet your needs. And then finally, I like Life 360 for location monitoring. I actually don't like Apple and Android's location monitoring. I don't find it very user friendly. But Life 360 is just another app which is very user friendly. They don't ask for your credit card information. And it's just a good way to keep sort of tabs on your kid if you feel like that's necessary. I still strongly suggest that you have an open dialogue with your kids and don't behind their backs install software. I mean, give them a chance to, earn your trust and then, respect them. Just because when you and I were kids, we wanted our parents to trust us at least a little bit. And then increasingly as we got older, especially if we were not making mistakes and not violating their trust. So I know that's a lot of content. It takes a village. All of us want to try to do our part whenever we get our chance. And again, you know that we're here to help you in any way that we can. And even when it came to the resilience exercises or the empathy exercises, I had limited time. Happy to follow up with you with more exercises that you can do at home, or if you're a teacher or educator at school, etc. Just reach out with what you need. Here's my contact information. Again, Heather has this, and I'm sure it was on the invite as well that you received. At this point, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to grab a sip of water, and I will stop sharing my screen, send it back to Heather. Thank you so much for your time, and open it up for questions.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Samir. This was so rich in information. So I'm going to look at the chat and see how if we get any questions. I know we had a hand raised at some point, but I do have some questions in the meantime. So I'll kind of sit and wait for a couple to come in. I was a reader, by the way. I was an avid comic book collector, and sci-fi and fantasy was my jam. So just so you know. Let's see here. I'm not seeing questions come in yet, but I do have a couple to kind of follow up on some of the concepts that you shared. Thank you so much. As a mom of a 9-year-old and as well as a 14-year-old, so much. I mean, we're right in it. So obviously I was like, oh, I love this webinar. Okay, very happy. So, okay, going back to the concept of resilience, which is kind of a part of our portrait of a grad. How much do you think, like, I don't know, there's not some like magic number, but here's a task. A kid has a task from school that they've been given. How much do you push your kid through that task? Like, or at what point are you supposed to take those scaffolds away and let the failure happen? Are there strategies for yourself as a parent on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to know your kid and continue to try different things. Let's say that you push them really hard because you just wanted to try it, and they fall apart, and it leads to hours of them alone in their room being really upset. Well, then you know that, okay, it's not time yet. But then, sometimes, yeah, you just got to be careful about swooping in too quickly, because we do want them to learn and grow. And so it's really just kind of trial and error, I would say.
Right. And I loved the data you were sharing about the not only the nurture versus nature, but that kindness and caring and compassion were the kind of the highest one. I mean, that gives me hope for all families, right? That like, hey, we're surrounded by people that share those beliefs. Do you have a safer social media? Oh, wait, we have a question coming in. Sorry. What is the most dangerous app for middle schoolers, if there is such a thing? This is from Rosalie from Jefferson Middle School, I believe. And this is the age where they start to experience a taste of independence, which we obviously want to give them. But how do we be savvy as parents? Is there something that really is a red flag for us?
Rosalie, thank you for your question. Um, I don't love using the term dangerous because I feel like any of our kids, could deal with some sort of problem experience on any app. Even on Google Classroom, we've heard of stories where kids might open up a Google Docs and then start, to sort of message each other, so to speak, by typing rows of text, harassing each other. So it's not really specific to the app or the medium. What I would say that I would like you to be aware of is, where's your child getting their identity? If it seems like they're desperate for attention and likes and comments and friends and followers on social media, I want you to try to figure out a way to get them to understand that popularity comes and goes, and the attention from friends is so fleeting sometimes, and it's very, very unstable. Think about celebrities who are so popular one day, but then the next year everyone makes fun of them and no one talks about them. So we cannot get our identity from unstable sources like peer perceptions. We need to try to work with our kids to get their identity from who they're becoming, the academic successes that they're experiencing or other successes in life, their family and their family standards and what you all stand for. Some families get their identity from faith and religion, from those sorts of things that are much more stable than peer perceptions. That's what I would ask you to have your antenna or your radar attuned to.
Thank you. And we have a question here from Britti. What are your thoughts on video games and empathy? And then Britti, we'll follow up on this next comment you have here about paths of disapproval and about timeout in particular. And Britti, while he's answering your first question, would you just remind us what grade is your child in? So thoughts on video games and empathy, Dr. Hinduja.
Preeti, thank you for your question. So I'm not sure what direction you're wanting to go here. I will say that most of the time, the vast majority of video games, they don't naturally cultivate empathy. It's kind of a bummer. And maybe kids would be sort of clued in if it started to seem like preaching to them, like, oh, wait, there's some sort of message, some sort of noble thing I'm supposed to learn through this. So it isn't very natural in the major popular games. But I still think that you can have conversations with your kids about how they're using the microphone, how they're using their headset. One thing I would want to share with you, which was so wonderful for me to realize, is in our tween study, which again is 9 through 12-year-olds, we asked them about, Roblox and Minecraft and Fortnite and all these other popular games. And what I love to see was that 2 out of 3 of them, so close to, I think 66% of them, engaged in what are called helping behaviors online. So for example, in a game, they gave somebody else, they were prompted to give someone else, their heart was prompted to give someone else points or gifts or money in that game, or a new weapon or some other sort of benefit. Some helped their friends level up or helped another person level up or befriended them in the game. Others defended someone when they were being picked on. Others encouraged them in another way. Others befriended someone at school that they only really kind of knew from playing games with them online, because again, their heart was prompted. They felt like helping, they felt empathetic towards that person, which is very, very promising and hopeful. And the second thing I'll say is that there have been some companies which are starting to create empathy-driven games using VR, those headsets like Oculus, and AR, augmented reality, where we're sort of using our phone like with Pokemon to sort of experience life through our screen, but also out there as well. And some of those are very intentionally developed around the theme of empathy to try to get kids, to try to present to kids scenarios in which they have to decide, okay, what to do. And what's my conscience telling me? What's my heart telling me? And what's the wrong way to act in this situation? All again, based on role playing.
From those people that are in the room right now, what games are your students playing? I'd love to hear that. We've nixed Roblox in our house. It's a little Wild West out there in Roblox land, but we also as a foursome, we play different games together, right? But any games out there you want to mention? And I believe she also asked a question about paths of disapproval. Like, where does timeout fall into?
I think timeout is completely legitimate. The passive disapproval, to refresh everyone's memory, were okay, so our child messes up. We want to express disapproval. And the two paths are it goes in the direction of shame, which is where your child thinks to themselves, I'm a bad person, or it goes in the direction of guilt, where your child thinks to themselves, I did a bad thing. And that's much more promising because they know we still care about them. We still unconditionally love them. They made a mistake like we all do. So timeout, as long as you couch it or tie it together with, look, son, daughter, you know I love you, but you also know this was wrong. You know all the lessons we've taught you over the years, and I bet in your heart you knew it was wrong when you did it. So I need you to go sit on. In my family, in my house, we have this blue couch. I need you to go sit on the blue couch. You're in timeout, and I need you to think about what you did. And please, come to me when you have changed your heart, or I will check in with you in a little bit. That's how we do things in my household.
I'm responding. Minecraft plays a big role in our home. There you go. We are big Minecraft players over here, as well as World of Warcraft. But D&D's our jam. Anyway, let's see. Any other questions out there? We would love to hear from you. In the meantime, you're going to have to hear my questions. Anything else coming in? So, I've got one here. Is there like a safer social media site for tweens or social media for tweens? So something happened during these closures, right? So many of us have kids that maybe we had rules established about technology use, but of course school's closed and now their social life is online and school's online, and that opened up the rules a little bit prematurely or earlier than maybe we would have chosen. So for our younger tweens, are there safer social media sites out there that can maybe help them through these lonelier times?
Yes. I'll first start by saying that the default tendency of all our kids is to be on the most popular sites.
Right.
But we do have for younger kids, YouTube Kids. We do have for younger kids Facebook Messenger for kids. And I'm actually on the advisory boards of these companies, and they look to me and other people to give them advice about, okay, how can we best meet the needs? How can we make sure we've got the right content? How can we have the interactive features that they want? For example, stickers and emojis and other sort of cool messaging features that they enjoy. So yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, you would want your kids to be using those. I guess you would call them walled garden apps because they're a little bit more. They're more constrained. They're more arguably safe, but they still might feel the pressure because all of their other kids and maybe those other parents are like, be on whatever you want. Maybe those other parents don't know about these other kid-friendly apps, so they might say, I need to be on where my other friends are. But maybe you could be the parent who introduces the other parents to Facebook Messenger Kids or YouTube Kids or something like that.
I didn't even know about Facebook Messenger Kids. I'm glad to hear about it. And I guess, let's see, my other question is, okay, so I think this question occurred to me looking at the Instagram with the young ladies at the sleepover, right? Who had possibly excluded another young lady, right? And I loved how you modeled the zinging out of control, right? Which everyone's mind does at times, right? You make those kind of negative connections until you go to the dark place. So what are the strategies that we can help our students use to help turn the volume down maybe on those strategies? And I think a follow-up to that question would be, in this time of grief for parents and where there's fewer parents that are sorry, so many of us are now feeling this kind of the same darkness in many ways. There's fewer adults for kids to lean on that aren't sharing the same feelings sometimes. How do we model that? How do we help regulate those feelings?
Yeah. I try to sort of practice what I preach. And so what I've been personally trying to do is slow down. And, that requires a ton of intentionality. But I have been saying to myself, I don't want life to live me. I want to live life. And so that's helping me. I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's helping me to slow down, to try to be calm. And when I'm facing a major stressor, I try to, again, identify the emotions that I'm feeling. Today we had an incident. We had date night, and uh, I just sort of confronted a couple of people on the beach who were stealing these beautiful shells that were set at this memorial, which, it was a memorial for someone, and they were stealing all the most beautiful shells. So I confronted them, and then, my wife and I dealt with these heavy emotions, these stressed out emotions, like, should we have confronted them? Should we not? What are they thinking of, etc. So what I helped my wife do, and what I tried to help myself do, is slow down, take a deep breath, understand, okay, my heart was in the right place. I felt like they were violating the sanctity of this memorial on the beach by stealing the shells. So if my heart's on the right place, then I can be okay with how things shook out. And so that's helping me. And when it comes back to kids, with younger kids, I would have them on a sheet of paper draw certain emoji faces of the heavy emotion, like an angry face or a sad face, or you could say, you're feeling kind of embarrassed. Can you draw a face of what that looks like? Or they could just write the words. They could write, if they're older, like a middle schooler, a bunch of descriptive words about how they're feeling. And then once they have those all out on a sheet of paper and just say, are you done? Did you get every single feeling out in a picture form, in a face form, or in a word form? Once they get them all out, then we can sort of say, okay, these are a lot of emotions. And like, let's look at what just happened and let's see, did that incident, now that we've got a little bit of perspective, really need to lead to all this sort of vomiting of emotions? Or, okay, it was awful and it should definitely affect you. And we don't mean to trivialize it, but is there a way we can view it as just a form of adversity that you have to overcome to become more resilient? Or can this make you stronger in some way? Or did this teach you something that's now another tool in your toolbox, which is going to help you sort of live a better life, live a more legendary life, live a great story with your life, something like that? I just try to reframe it for them in more hopeful terms, and that tends to help.
Thank you. And we do have another question here. Oh, and Rosalie, I am making note of this question right here. So I really appreciate you asking about the connection with school with all of this. So thank you very much. Is there any structured curriculum or recommended class or books out there that teach kids the proper rules of digital citizenship? And do you think there should be a semester class at school? I take it Rosalie does, and I understand why. There's a lot out there, and so I guess, and I'm going to follow up and say, should there be a semester class? Should it be embedded into all classes? Like, is there a structure or model that you would recommend for schools?
Great question. Thank you, Rosalie. So number one, on our website, we have a document that is called something like digital citizenship, 10 activities that educators can use with students in order to promote something like that. But we've tried to collect 10 of the best. I know Common Sense Media has a number of digital citizenship activities on their website, but they're sort of spread. They're not sort of in this clear module by module framework. So that doesn't exist. So it's up to the educator to pick and choose what they think are most relevant to their students, because they know their students better than anyone. So with regard to whether it should be a semester, I mean, I'm biased. I would love for more and more time to be spent on these sorts of issues. But what's really interesting is that research is showing that it actually shouldn't be in some sort of separate digital citizenship class. For example, sexting should actually be in a healthy relationships module. Bullying should be in a healthy sort of like respect of myself and respect of others cyberbullying should be in a how to respect teaching. Like, I respect myself, I respect others in these way. So you bring it back to non-tech and you just sort of cover it in these sorts of normal social and emotional skill set classes or episodes or teaching modules, whatever you'd want to say. You don't compartmentalize it and train our students on it separately.
Rosalie, you can send me anything you want, any opinion you've got on this particular topic, you send it to me, because we are always looking to make sure that our kids are aware of digital citizenry. And when we're talking about our portrait of a graduate and global citizenry, it certainly fits in there, as well as empathy and communication. And this is something that we are constantly talking about at the district. So you hit really right on it. So thank you very much for that question.
And I
Excellent.
also want to say briefly that, this is on the radar of school districts. This is on the radar of San Gabriel. We all have different amount of resources, and we all have different sorts of pressures on us related to the lesson plans and the curriculums and what needs to be covered by state mandate, et cetera. And so I would just ask you to be gracious, but it is a priority area for the district.
Thank you very much. Any other questions before we wrap it up tonight? Anything else that wants to come in? Well, Dr. Handruja, it has been an absolute pleasure to hear from you today. And again, our meetings leading up to it have been things I've certainly have really looked forward to. And I look forward to continuing those conversations, because we've got to talk about kids and education and technology and just really raising decent people. So thank you very much to you. Jackie and Mandy, thank you once again. They're my partners in crime. I so appreciate both of you. And thank you very much for joining us at San Gabriel Unified's Parents as Partners Learning Series. Have a wonderful evening. We love your students. We love you. Keep coming. Keep sending us ideas for this learning series. It's something we're really committed to. And we're just, we're all in this together, and we're stronger together. You be well, you be healthy, and be safe, okay? Have a good evening, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you, ladies. Oh, good, Priti. Very good. I'm so glad you loved it. Great, Rosalie. Excellent. You email me any ideas you have, anything, just comments, you just email me and let me know, okay? Take care, everybody. I know you can't talk. Jackie and Mandy, thank you once again. It's always a pleasure to see you both. Marcos, did Marcos get on okay? Did he get into that room? He's right there. Let's see. Yeah, at Gabrielino. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Good night, everybody. Closing out. Take care.